I suppose with it being topical with a recent bill in Texas and all, we should go ahead and talk about abortion a little bit. Not just to put my own thoughts out there, but because it's a discussion worth having, and the discussion that people are having is not actually the discussion that needs to happen. This is an incredibly complex and nuanced issue that does not actually have a clean answer. And when you don't have a clean answer, you actually have to err on the side. Well, I don't suppose have to is the right word, but from my perspective, from a an ANCAP voluntarist, Rothbardian, libertarian type perspective, you err on the side of liberty and individual. You do not err on the side of the collective. And you definitely don't err on the side of authority. So let's just get this off the table right now and state, look, policy-wise, I am pro-choice, but ethically and morally, I am very much anti-abortion. And honestly, really what that comes down to is I believe very heavily in the sanctity of life, and even more so, I very much believe in the responsibility of individuals. I believe that people need to be much more responsible for their conduct and be much more aware of the consequences of their conduct and take precautions. I just do not care for the people that push themselves into excess and do things that with reckless abandon and whatnot. I'm not pro that, and I'm not pro anything that supports that. So that now that we got that off the table, one of the things that is frustrating about this issue is that if you go and try to look up data or even just news reports and opinion polls and expert opinions and whatnot, for every point that you get in favor of your side, you can find a point counter to your side. And really what it comes down to is the fact that even the science and the social jockeying and the politicking and psychological jockeying is all very divided and very split. Now, one of the things that I can say, especially in the United States, is that this country was founded with the idea of religious freedom. It's built right into the First Amendment. Part of the whole reason of leaving England and all of that, right? Religious freedom. So if you go, well, I am against this because my religion has taught me that it is wrong, that is fine, but you do not get to put that on the state. Now, look, again, as a voluntarist, as an ANCAP, as a Rothbardian, I am against the state to begin with. But the fact is that ideals being what they are, we exist within the state. We exist within a country that has a state. And it can be at times important to not just use civil disobedience, but to actively fight against the system. And in many cases, we have to kind of suck it up and put things out there, right? I mean, yes, the real change happens ground up, street level, absolutely, right? The agorists have it mostly right. But there's just that little bit of Rothbardianism that says, well, there might be a few things that you can affect change within the system. I don't believe that you can actually fix the system from within, but there might be some things you can at least keep the brakes on. So, okay, that aside, if you're going to have a state, and the state is going to be enforcing rules, and you're a liberty-minded person, then you want to make sure that the rules that are in place are there to, anytime there is a mode of error on the table, which is 100% of the time, that the error falls in favor of liberty, in favor of the individual, not in favor of authority, not in favor of the collective. This is extremely important because there are too many unknowns, there are too many consequences that can't be known. You have to err on the side of liberty. And so when it comes to something like abortion, right, the religious argument just cannot stand at the state level unless you want a theocracy. And there's not really a scientific argument. And now look, I'm not going to be pro-left on this either, because their arguments are just as fallacious, if not worse, because it's not just a woman's body, right? As soon as the egg is fertilized and cell division begins, it has its own genetic code. It is a separate entity. Now, yes, it does affect the female in the short term over the course of the next, the next 9 months for sure, plus the nursing period. It definitely affects the woman more, for sure. No argument there. But the fact is that she didn't create it by herself. And I believe it is just reprehensible. And now I'm not saying this is rampant, right? But I do believe it is absolutely reprehensible to use abortion as like a contraceptive or as a last minute regret thing. I think that is pretty awful. But really the crux of the matter here is the fact that there is a father involved. There's a mother and a father. Biologically speaking, I don't care what you identify as, but there's a biological mother and a biological father involved. And except in some pretty specific circumstances, the father should have a say in what happens to the fetus or the zygote or whatever stage of development it's in. The father should have a say. Now, there are some scenarios where that maybe gets taken off the table, sure, but the father should have some say. And maybe it shouldn't be equally weighted with the woman because of how much it affects her during the pregnancy. Should a woman be forced to carry a child to term? No. But it's a negotiation, and it should be a negotiation between the two, and if it needs legal mediation, then so be it. But the fact is that the father should have some say in it. And then here's a counteroffer. If you're going to say the woman can just do it regardless, no input, whatever, then equally the father should be able to walk away. No paternity tests, no child support, nothing, right? Because if you give the woman the freedom to do with it what she will, you should absolutely be giving the man the freedom to do with it what he will. Now, right? Most people aren't going to be for that. Most people are going to say, well, she's owed child support. What if she decides to keep it and the father doesn't want it? Isn't that just as serious of a situation? Why should he be forced to support her and the child if he doesn't want either of them, right? Fair's fair. It's a messy circumstance. So there's not a clean solution here. There's not. There really isn't a clean solution. If you want to create policy around this idea, then you're going to have to bullet point out every single little contingency. And I guarantee you're going to miss some because there are unforeseeable consequences and there are unforeseeable scenarios that you just won't be accounted for. Something's going to slip through the cracks and it's not going to work. And people are going to be unjustly punished for decisions that other people are making on their behalf. And that's not right either. It is a messy, messy scenario. And it is a scenario that the government never should have entered into in the first place. Never should have entered into in the first place. And the fact is that whatever decision you make policy-wise is going to have problems, is going to have flaws, and you're going to piss off a lot of people. So at the end of the day, what do? Right? The best thing you can do is just decriminalize things, let people make their decisions, make people deal with the consequences of the decisions, and don't unjustly punish people for making decisions beyond the natural consequences of those decisions. There's no reason for additional punishment. And it's a terribly messy situation. So, be pro, be anti, whatever, but understand that this is a very, very nuanced conversation to be had, and there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer that satisfies everybody. It is not possible. So again, we should always be erring on the side of freedom in the individual, because that at least removes a lot of the unnatural, unnecessary consequences levied on top of whatever natural consequences there are. So there's my unsatisfactory, messy video. I will talk to you guys later. Good journey.
Chocolate covered laser discs, flashing like a dagger in the night.